Welcome. We're now going to move into the fifth module, events or communication between components and the page. So we're beginning to see really the power of web components. So let's go into our folder and close everything down, go into number 5. Just to recap, we've seen before that if we're just using the light DOM, no shadow DOM, that basically we can add any events to our tags because they are HTML tags. So all the things we can do in our regular HTML, we can do with web components. So if we open this up again, we've seen this example before. We see we can click on that. If we look at F12, we can see here, for example, we click on this, we get an event. We're clicking getting a public variable and a public method. Let's have a look at what that is. Although these are web components, what one must remember is it's still just plain old JavaScript. So if we have a look at here, we can see we're making our template where we have click me here, and we're going through our constructor, but we can also have a so-called public variable in the component. There are no private variables in JavaScript. And so you can see here, for example, we can also expose a public method or just a method on the web component, which we can call in the light DOM. So if we come back up here and have a look at the light DOM, we can see we're getting just reference, and this is how we can access our web component on the page. We make a query selector to it. We can have a button that when we click, that can basically, it's as if it instantiates an instance of that web component. And you can see here we can access the public value, and we can actually set it. We can also add an event listener, so when we click a button we can invoke the public method on it. So what we might normally sort of see, for example, where we might normally see something like constant object equals new, and say there was a class, and then we would invoke methods and properties on that class. It's as if by making this custom web component, the tag, if we come up here, it's as if this tag here is creating an instance of this class that we've defined in our web component, and then before we have access to the methods and properties on it. So hence, when we see in our JavaScript, we can actually have buttons that will change values, and we can also have events that can actually invoke methods on that component. So coming back down here again, we've got a class level property, pubval, that's the initial value, but we can change it on click on the page. We can also have methods in the web component which we can access. Now this practice is not really done. Web components are designed to be kind of encapsulated, but as you design your applications, if you wanted to invoke methods or set properties directly this way, you can, but the practice is to set properties through the attributes on the web component, and that the component then speaks to the parent page through custom events, which we'll get onto. But this is just to show that this is still just regular JavaScript, and all the principles of JavaScript carry out their functions here in this component. So let's go back here again. Let's refresh the page. So we've seen our constructor being there. We've seen this click event. We can click the public variable. If we click that, the initial value was set in the constructor. We're now setting it to some new value. We have a public method, shall we say, on that component. We click it, public method called, and we've passed the value in. So you do have that option if you want to have web components on your page that talk sort of directly to each other, or you access the internals directly. Though the practice, as we see going forth, is actually, as I've said, to use attributes and to use custom events and have a kind of controller in your app that's managing all these events and property changes and integrating all the different components. So that's our first look at sort of how events and property changes take place in web components.